Hi, I'm Mitch, and welcome to the Restoration Road, where my guest today is County Line Worship Arts Pastor Kevin McIntire. Kevin will authentically and transparently share his story, including a valley where he needed God to deliver him. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today.
No problem.
You've been
It's an honor,
such a
man.
blessing to me and my family. How long have you been carrying my brother Stewie at County Line?
Oh man, 15 and a half years now.
It has flown by. It
Yes,
seems
it
like
has.
yesterday. I remember meeting you for the very first time. It seems like yesterday. I want to ask you a question that I always think of when I'm around somebody with your gifts and talents.
Sure.
When in the world did you know you had this music gift?
Well, I've been involved in music since I was a child. I mean, I grew up in the church, so singing with the little kids' choirs and playing the piano. Started taking lessons when I was 8. Really started getting into church music more when I was in high school, joined some traveling choirs and things like that, and really didn't feel a particular call into ministry until later in life, but musically it's something I just always enjoyed doing, singing and playing.
There was a pivotal moment, I think your junior year of high school, you actually get asked to lead worship from the piano.
Correct. Yeah, our music pastor at the time, Billy is his name, and they had a piano player step down, and he came to me and said, hey, would you consider playing the piano for us? Maybe singing a little bit every now and then. So that was kind of my first church experience and invitation to be a worship leader. So that kind of set me on my journey.
And then over the next few summers, did you travel to lead worship?
Yeah, I was a part of a group out of Joplin, Missouri called Highest Praise. And they traveled 2 tours, split east and west. I sang 1 year and then played the next 2 years on the piano, got to direct a little bit, which developed a love for choirs and singing choirs engage in worship. And so, yeah, that's where
How do you decide where to go to college with this gift blossoming inside you?
Well, to be honest with you, one of my favorite Christian singers back in the day when I was in high school was Stephen Curtis Chapman.
Saddle up your horses, baby.
Absolutely, man. I remember my sister handed me a cassette tape, and she said, I think you'll like this guy. And so I listened to him, and his lyrics, the way he wrote, it was kind of new back then, and it just really struck a chord with me. And so I started listening to his music, started going to concerts, just really became a fan of his, not just musically, but just his life and the way he would speak into things and the way he moved me. And found out he went to Anderson University for a year or two, pursuing a music business degree. So I started looking into music business, what that was all about. And really, Anderson was one of the few colleges that offered that. And so I decided to go ahead and pursue that to get to Anderson and see if I could be a part of the music business as well.
So when you get to college, a lot of things seem to happen your first year. You get a little disenfranchised with the music business degree. You think you're going to go a different direction?
Yeah, my freshman year was really a pivotal point, not only academically, but personally. I found out, first of all, too much about the music business to want to be a part of the music business in that realm and the executive side of things. And it just wasn't very appealing to me anymore. And so I stepped aside, but also at that time was a time when my parents informed me that they were going to be getting a divorce. And so...
Did you see that coming, or were you kind of blindsided?
There were signs the summer before I left, just a few months before I actually went to Anderson, but I maybe saw some signs, but I still wasn't ready for it.
Right.
Yeah.
No. That takes you to a dark place, and then you start reflecting back, I think, to when you were younger and start putting pieces of the puzzle together on why you're sensing this anxiety.
So if I can, just share a funny story about when I learned
Sure.
kind of the circumstances of my birth.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually sitting in church, really ugly blue pews, Colony Heights Church, and I was sitting there, and my mom was sitting on my right, and I don't know, pastor was speaking about something. My mind just went to this, and I leaned over to my mom, and I said, Mom, I was born November 30th, 1976, right? She's like, yeah. And I was probably 8 or 10, and paused a minute, and I said, you were married in August, right? What year? She said, 1976. And then I paused a little bit more. And I looked at her during the service and I said, doesn't it take 9 months to make a baby? And she leaned over to me and just put that mom pinch on me, you know, like on the leg, and just said, we will talk about this later. And so, I don't know, some light bulbs started coming on then, but no, just looking back and just seeing having some good counsel in my life since then. Really, I think right then I kind of had the seeds planted of, you know, you weren't necessarily planned. You weren't, not that you weren't loved, but you, and not that you were a mistake, but in a way it kind of felt that way, you know, that this was a mistake. You were born, God loves you, and he's going to use you. But there's just that deep-seated emotion of I wasn't wanted to begin with. And so that, taking us back to the college, and that really started to mess with me a little bit and to really send me down a dark path of, you know, maybe I wasn't supposed to be here.
You feel like you lost your direction a little bit there. And is that when the weight gain takes place? Yeah,
I just, during that, you know, they joke about the freshman 10 or whatever. I had like the freshman 25. I mean, it was, you know, all you could eat buffets, and it was, I lost, you know, I lost myself in just, you know, what I was eating, the things I was watching. I just didn't care very much anymore, and just kind of let myself go, and really entered into a pretty dark time there.
And is it in that dark time where Erica comes into your life?
Absolutely. Light of my life right there.
This is amazing.
Yeah, she entered, I met her my sophomore year, her freshman year at Anderson, and she had a boyfriend at the time.
Oh.
Yeah, at home. Last name McIntire, believe that or not.
Unbelievable.
I know.
Was it your cousin?
No. No relation. So we start talking, she breaks up with him. About a month later, we start dating. And I decide, you know, I'm just gonna spill everything. I don't want this relationship going any further if, you know, she's just gonna lead me down the road. So I shared everything with her, fully expecting her to back away. And I remember where we were sitting, I remember, you know, where we were, and she just kind of put her arm around me and said, we're gonna get through this together. And so that was super meaningful, and, you know, started our relationship, and been married 20 years now. So
at that time, you begin a plethora of careers. Can you share with us what those are?
Absolutely. And Stu makes fun of me all the time about how many jobs I've had. But during that time, I was everything from I was a car salesman for 2 weeks. Didn't hold up there. I worked at a swimming pool store. I worked at a company that monitored criminals that were on in-house arrest. I worked for a temp agency as an administrative assistant for a bank. Worked at the school. I mean, it was just job to job to job. Didn't really enjoy anything, and yeah.
Do you sense a call to lead worship?
No.
What happened?
No. I was pretty lost. I wasn't in school. I didn't really have a whole lot of direction, and the call to ministry didn't happen until a little later. When my wife's father, who's a pastor down in southern Indiana, he directed a youth choir and knew my love for choirs. I was involved in the choir at our church at Anderson. And he said, hey, would you consider directing this youth choir? And I said, sure, that sounds like a lot of fun. And it was a blast. I mean, when I look back, it's one of the highlights of my life.
Wow,
so
that's cool. How do you end up at County Line Church of God?
I felt the call into ministry during one of those concerts that we were doing. Long story short, they had some dissension between two churches, and we finished our tour at one of those churches, and the youth of those churches were the ones that came together at the end of the concert, went out and grabbed their parents and basically said, this is ridiculous. We need to reconcile and get right. This is what God would want us to do. And watching them and just being a part of that whole situation, I really felt like God placed that on my heart to combine music and reconciling people to Him. It was just such an awesome moment. So I went and talked to my pastor at the time. His name was Fred, and really went through a time of about a year of just really searching of, is this really a call in my life? And so they affirmed that. I went to a few churches, and County Line was always just kind of on my mind.
Because you had a Church of God background, right? With Anderson University?
With Anderson, yeah. I had a Church of God background. And I'd heard about County Line earlier, kind of in the process, but when I sent my resume in, it was kind of ignored. It was put aside by this guy named Stu Cruz, who was a associate pastor. And so when I called him to ask about, hey, is that position still open? I got we got your resume, it's on file. We have 4 candidates already in line, so if those fall through, we'll call you. And so obviously I didn't expect anything. I was actually out candidating, which is a fancy word for trying out, for a church in Pennsylvania. But on the drive home from Pennsylvania, it was such a bad experience. And we'd had another bad experience prior to that, that Eric and I were both questioning at this point, is this really what God wants us to do? Because we've struck out twice and in very hurtful ways. And so when we arrived back at our house, the answering machine was blinking. And when we listened to it, it was a woman named Carol that attends County Line Church, saying she was on the search committee and they really wanted to talk to me. So it was really the last phone call I expected to receive. But so that's how we started the conversation. And
does your car break down on the way to the interview or the small group you're going to see first?
No, it didn't break down. We just didn't have one that was super reliable. This was about a 5-hour drive, okay? And so we call Enterprise and say, hey, you got a car we can rent? And they said, well, we do, but there's only a couple left on the lot. One was a big car, and the other one was this decked out Cadillac. I mean, it was like gold. It was amazing. And we had a 1-year-old at the time. So my wife and I were like, hey, we got to get there. We need this. We'll just go ahead and rent the Cadillac. And the people's house that we were going to, they live on a farm. And so we pull up, and the story.
They're looking out.
Yeah, we pull up in their long driveway. We're rolling up in this gravel driveway, cows on one side, everything, and we're rolling up in this Cadillac. And I know they're peering out the window, and I did find out from Nyla. She was the one. She said, "Well, we can't afford these people," because we were driving up in a Cadillac. So I made sure to tell them right away, no, that this isn't our car. But that was great, and just the atmosphere from the start at County Line has just been phenomenal.
You really helped transition the church into, I would say, a more contemplative, more contemporary worship, but it's just been so authentic and so powerful. We build a new auditorium, and you get stretched really thin. We're growing so fast. You're doing multiple services, and you're basically living, breathing, and sleeping this. You're at the church all hours of the night. You work hard for the grand opening of the church, and you recognize that there's something just not right. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, before we moved into the new room, we were at 4 services on the hour, 8, 9, 10, 11.
It was a madhouse when you would leave and the other group would come in.
It was, and one entrance. They called it herding cattle every single week, and it was exciting because we had the new building coming.
We had little airport people dividers, remember?
Yes,
so you knew which side to walk.
Stanchions. Yeah. So it was an exciting time because there was something coming, and so I don't feel like I recognized the amount of exhaustion that was happening right away because there was the adrenaline of trying to open a new building. And we literally were there all night, the night before our opening. Didn't get a chance to go to bed that night. And so then we opened the new building and still running at a pretty high level, high pace. And I just start to feel different. I'm not really enjoying the things I used to enjoy. Leading worship is becoming more of a burden than a joy. I didn't really enjoy spending time with family. even my own kids. It was hard to engage with them, harder to engage with them and my wife. And I knew we have some family history of depression and anxiety, but I had always kind of thought of it as, I mean, to be honest with you, almost fake. I had never gone through it, so I just thought it was something you could just will yourself out of. And until I started experiencing it, I just really didn't understand the amount of pain, how real it actually is. And it started with a high level of anxiety where I would wake up at night shaking. I would wake up screaming for no reason. Sometimes when it got really bad, I would actually have to run out of the house into the driveway just to feel a sense of not being claustrophobic. And it started to get really, really regular. And I was pretty stubborn about it. I didn't want to go see anybody. I felt like it was kind of a weakness. I didn't want to give into it. So yeah, it was a pretty dark time at that time as well.
I think you even found yourself at County Line in the bathroom, just shaking and.
Yeah, that was the culmination of everything. One night when I went to bed, I just started just having some pretty violent tremors that I couldn't control. Erica was pretty worried. She wanted to take me to the hospital, but I just didn't want to deal with it. And that woke me up a couple times. I dropped my son off at Creative Play School the next morning. And as soon as I dropped him off, I started shaking again and hid in the bathroom trying to, till it was over. And came out, and at that point, I realized I need to see somebody for this because this is getting really serious. So I went to my doctor.
What did he say?
He called me the most stubborn anxiety patient he'd ever seen in his entire life. He said, "I can't believe you've let it get this far." But I didn't really know what was happening. I just thought it was something I would get over and didn't realize the seriousness of it. So
do you begin experimenting with different prescription medications?
Yeah, they tried me on so many combinations of medications, and for whatever reason, none of them seemed to work perfectly. The side effects were awful for me. I lost all sense of emotion. I couldn't cry. There were situations where people would be bawling their eyes out in front of me, and I just could not connect with them. I couldn't connect emotionally. And it was really frustrating as a pastor, not being able to sympathize, with the people that are coming to you for advice. And yeah, that was hurtful. I wanted to get better, but I also, wanted to be a good pastor.
Mm-hmm. So Stu is obviously recognizing that you're not the same.
Yeah.
And what does he suggest?
Well, he was really good. He was frustrated at first, I think. But then once he, saw the things that were happening, became more sympathetic. And he had heard of a pastor down in Muncie whose church had given him a sabbatical. And so he suggested that to me. In fact, he said, "This is something we have to make happen for you because you're not going to make it if you don't." So the church agreed to do that.
Did you begin counseling right away in the sabbatical?
Yes, really intense counseling. In fact, 3 or 4 times a week, I would go to counseling through their assessments that they did and just talking to me, diagnosed me, with severe depression and anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, and started me on the meds that helped in the long run, but didn't do me any good in the short term.
How did you come out of it? I know there was an outpouring of love from the congregation. I know Erica was amazingly a champion through all of this. But you did experience divine healing, and God used the Word of God, the people of God, the Spirit of God to do that. But how did that unfold specifically for you?
Well, first of all, speaking of our congregation, it was completely unexpected. But when I went on sabbatical, I don't know why we do this to ourselves, but I expected people to almost be ashamed of me. Or to, I don't know, I didn't expect the outpouring of love that I received. I received cards, multiple cards every single day. Phone calls sometimes, emails, gifts. People just lavishing it on us, on our family. And that was so encouraging. And at one point, speaking of Stephen Curtis Chapman, we received an offer from a local radio station to come help with a Stephen Curtis Chapman concert. And this is how bad I was. I had no interest in going. I had absolutely no interest in going to see Stephen, which was completely not like me. I would go see him any chance I could get. And so it was at IPFW's campus. And we go, and I was supposed to help out with the crew, but everything was taken by the time I got there. So they didn't need me. Erica was needed. She got to do the product table or something. But I was just literally by myself. And one of the organizers that I knew that worked at the radio station just encouraged me. She said, hey, just go sit in the concert. Just take it in. And so I did. And the first part of the concert was okay. But I was growing increasingly frustrated because I just wasn't enjoying it. And so during the intermission, my wife is at the product table, and I'm by myself, and I'm just a wreck. I'm probably at the lowest point that I've ever been. And I found myself in a practice room, at one of their piano practice rooms, and I'm just sitting there looking at the keyboard, thinking about my ministry, my life, my kids, my family, the future. And for the first time in a while, I start producing tears and just crying out to God and saying, God, if you don't rescue me from this, I just feel like my story's done. I can't contribute anything worthwhile to anybody's life in this condition. And so unless you step in, I'm finished. Mm. And I meant it. I really just didn't see any way of moving on. So
Finished for you meant I'm not going to be a worship leader.
Not going to be a worship leader. It was darkness. I just don't know what I'm going to do from now on. Mm-hmm. Because when you're in those moments, and anybody who's been through it, you really can't see the next step. You just can't imagine what else is coming because everything is so closed in on you. It's hard to explain. So I walk out and I try to get out of going to the second part of the concert as well. But the same woman says, go sit. And so I did. And after just crying out to God in that way, Stephen starts the second half of the concert with a song I'd never heard. And as soon as he started singing, it was like the words of that song could have been, and I believe were, an actual answer to my prayer directly from the mouth of God. I mean, it was so powerful. I bawled through the rest of the concert.
Do you remember the words of that song?
Oh, yes.
That got your attention? Mm-hmm. What were they?
Lay your head down tonight. Take a rest from the fight. And don't try to figure it out. Just listen to what I'm whispering to your heart. I know this is not anything like you thought the story of your life was going to be. And it feels like the end has started closing in on you. But it's just not true. And then he's saying, there's so much of your story that's still yet to unfold. And I'm telling you, after saying those words and praying those words, God, I feel like my story's done. For him to come out, and that's the song he starts with. And I'd never heard it, so it was just an incredible moment for me of God just simply saying, I am with you. I have not abandoned you through this. And your story is just starting. And that's really what I needed. And I went out. Of course, Erica's working the product table, so she has no idea any of this is happening. Mm-hmm. I purchased the CD. We go and we sit in the car. And I'm a mess. And she hasn't seen me cry in months. And she's wondering what is happening.
Yeah, I bet.
And so I put the CD in. It's the first song on the album. And it starts playing. And so we both just sit in the Dunkin' Donuts parking lot in Fort Wayne, just weeping together. And for the first time, a sliver of hope, starts to emerge.
You come out of sabbatical and you share this story at County Line, and then you sing the song for us.
I tried to sing the song.
You thought you could make it through, but you didn't.
Yeah.
And how's it been since?
Up and down. I mean, you know, the recovery process was slow. Finally got some medications dialed in, which was great. And it has been in the new room, going through what I went through. I really feel that really helped me see the congregation more as family instead of, you know, just a congregation and we go to church. To come back after such an outpouring of love completely changed my mindset of the people of County Line and just how we're all in this together. And I know I can lean on them for support, you know, if I ever need it. And hearing my story has helped other people, which is, it's humbling, and at the same, it's very exciting too, that when somebody comes up to me for prayer and they need prayer for anxiety or depression, it's something I can speak into for them. And just seeing the music ministry grow, the church growth, and now planting multiple campuses. It's just, when I came over 15 years ago, you know, we're 350, 400 people to where we are now. It's just amazing to see how God has done all this.
I think 3,500 people call it home.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
And you
a lot
have
of
had
fun.
a lot to do with it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
In the 23rd Psalm, David writes that he restores my soul. He makes me new again. Wherever you are in your life with anxiety or depression, or you're just not sure, but it doesn't feel right, I want you to know that you can come to the God of the universe and He will restore your soul. Please go seek the help of a pastor, of a counselor, of a physician, and pursue the health that God has for you. He wants to restore your soul and use you to bring that restoration to others, just like He did with Kevin. He will do with you. Hi, I'm Mitch. Join Shirley Woods and me next week on the Restoration Road as we continue our series, Making Sense Why Bad Things Happen to Good People.